And thank you for staying with us here on Morning Live and on SABC News Channel. So for our next guest, it's been a grueling year of paperwork and red tape to turn her young business in Women Network into the first black female-owned mutual bank in South Africa. And to talk to us more about this, we are joined here by the young woman herself, Nthabeleng Likotsi, and we also joined for an empowerment perspective on this matter by the Executive Chairperson of the National Youth Development Agency, Sifiso Mtsweni. Thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you so much for inviting us.
So first and foremost, I'm like a stickler for definitions. What is a mutual bank, Nthabeleng?
Sure. Let's start first by saying there are 3 levels of banking in South Africa, right? I also didn't know this 3 years ago. So you have the first layer, which is the Cooperative Banks Act, and then you have a Mutual Banks Act, and then you have the Banks Act that we all know, the commercial banks. So the difference between the 3 is that the mutual bank is in the middle. A Cooperative Banks Act is that the Cooperative Banks is you can only service your own members. So only the shareholders can be serviced and nobody else. A mutual bank is a combination of the 2. So you can choose to be a shareholder, but we can assist people that decide that we're going to save with you or we're going to open an account with you, but we don't want to be shareholders. And then, of course, the commercial banks.
So the Young Women in Business Network, as I understand it, it started off pretty much operating like a stokvel on that sort of level. So explain to us the evolution.
It's the stokvel. Okay, so under the Cooperative Banks Act, when I read it, when I understood it, I was like, but this is a stokvel, a highly glorified, highly regulated stokvel. But this is something that my parents have been doing, our grandparents have been doing for the longest time. It's just that this time is bankable, right? So it's people that come together for a common goal and a common vision. So we have a constitution, we have policies that guide us. So with our one, we then decided with our cooperative financial institution, we're going to focus on entrepreneurs because we believe there's no bank in South Africa that understands purely black entrepreneurs and how we behave and what kind of support that we want. So we pay 550 Rand annual membership, 10,000 Rand share capital each person, and then we're required to save 1,100 Rand every month for a period of 5 years.
But of course, it wasn't an easy road. I mean, copious amounts of paperwork and bureaucratic red tape. Talk to us about that experience.
It took us 9 months to register as a cooperative financial institution. I mean, just to get to the 2,200,000 people. Right now, trying to graduate from a cooperative financial institution to a mutual bank, it took us over a year of trying to find, just to put an application together. I mean, the first time you contact the Reserve Bank, it will be, no, you need to contact one of the big 4 audit firms. They will assist you. And then obviously from there is you don't get a lot of people opening banks. So the skills of people that can put together an application for SAB is very rare in our country, unfortunately. So it started there in us trying to find who are the relevant people that we can work with. And I'm proud to say that we found 16 brilliant young black professionals that we have come together to put this application together that we are submitting this Friday.
And it all sounds fascinating. And I guess, what you said previously segues nicely into where NYDA could come in to play a role. So first and foremost, what are your reflections on this development?
Well, we're very proud of them. I think it tallies well with the fact that this is Youth Month. We remember the struggles that young people waged, which were not necessarily just about fighting Bantu education, but it was about fighting for freedom for young people to be able to reach greater horizons. And the mere fact that here's a young lady who said that, this concept of stokvels can actually, enter into that terrain. By the way, stokvels are banks. It's just that they are banks that operate in a separate way. And I think we fully support this initiative. That's why we're here. That's why we'll be joining the march tomorrow. And one of the things that we will continue to call from the Reserve Bank in particular is to say that particularly for youth-owned businesses or initiatives, let's remove the red tape. We don't understand as to why it must take 9 months, just to apply. But we're quite...
Shouldn't it start with you, though, at NYDA? Sifiso?
Well, remember, the job that we do, beyond anything else, is advocacy, is to advocate for youth interests. And when there's such initiatives, that's why we step up. And one of the things beyond the march is to actually talk to the Reserve Bank, is to talk to the Minister of Finance, is to talk to the President and say, how do we create a conducive environment to ensure that not only the Young Women's Business Network, but beyond that, let's ensure that young people start playing in that sector, because as you know, the financial services sector is actually one of the largest contributors to the GDP in this country, and unfortunately, it's strangled held by certain monopolies. I mean, you speak about 4 or 5 banks in the country; the rest are just small banks. In an environment where there has been a black bank, I think there's been all sorts of problems that were there, which in our view were as a result of lack of support. Because if you support this type of initiatives, you ensure that they've got proper systems in place. I don't think that such problems will happen. And that's why we're here to say to them that we'll support them, we'll advocate on their behalf, but at the same time ensure that they are empowered to fully achieve their dreams.
And also it becomes a function of communication, really, in making sure that the public understands exactly what services you do provide and how they get to access it. So in that regard, how does this work?
Greatest challenge. I mean, in the CBDA, we've been talking to them about educating South Africans about these levels of banking. People don't know. So when we get into the space and people are like, Nthabeleng, what is a cooperative bank? So before I can even talk about YWBN, I first start by educating, but this is what a cooperative financial institution is. So it's zooming into us is we positioning ourselves as the bank to go to for enterprise funding. So we have our products is bridge financing. So you have a purchase order, you need funding for that. We have supply and delivery. You come to us, it's a 2 months payment period. We charge you only 2.5% interest. I mean, that's like the cheapest interest you'll get in this country. And then you have another one that is 6 months. So this is somebody that says, my project is going to be longer than 2 months, so it's going to be 6 months. And then the longest one that we have is 12 months. But then beyond that, we're saying, there's an informal sector in the country that has not been fully activated. I mean, we talk about stockpiles that are estimated at about 50 billion. You talk about the hawkers that are just estimated at over 10 billion. You talk about the taxi industry. Those are the people that have money, and those are the people that have real cash, but it has not fully been activated. So once we get our mutual bank license, those are the people that we go into, because for us to decrease unemployment in the country, we need South Africans to come to the party. And for them coming to the party, it is for them to start saving, because banks cannot exist without savings. We need to save. Stockpiles are savings, right? So those are the people that we're going to go to, and we're going to activate that to use that money to fund entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs then will create jobs. Unemployment will go down.
And I guess, Sifiso, this is where you come in again, by trying to direct some of the traffic that comes through your doors from young people to this type of banking entity. However, you touched on the issue of, I think it was VBS Bank that you were touching on, and what happened with them, notorious story now. So that makes people a bit hesitant about people and establishments outside of the big five, as it were. How would you then go about convincing people that this is indeed a worthwhile initiative and the right place to put their monies?
Well, you'd know that this type of system that she refers to has succeeded in India. If you look at how the backdrop of the Indian economy is that you've got, mutual banks, community-driven banks, which are largely led by women, by the way. And probably even as a side point, I mean, all of us, we raised by mothers, and we know that the safest place to store money is it's when it's sitting with a mother or a woman. So anything that is driven by females, even those stockpiles, the most successful stockpiles that you'll find are those that are female driven. But I think there's a point that she raises, which is in two aspects. One is that there's a big economy in terms of the informal sector. And that particular economy, most of them, they actually keep money under the pillows, under the bed, and so on. Sometimes a house catches fire, the money is gone, So how do we ensure that we encourage those ones to start banking? But at the same time, another point that she raises is that how do we support entrepreneurship? Now, the problem with what has made entrepreneurship not to succeed in the country is how the banks themselves, the mainstream banks, have dealt with issues of funding. In most instances, many black-owned businesses could not get funding on the basis of their credit records and so on and so forth. But here we have a situation where we can say, here's a hawker who can, save money in this bank and be able to develop as an entrepreneur and grow.
I'll tell you what, the proof will be in the eating of this pudding, and I'm sure we will make time to come back to it. But thank you so much to our guest, Nthabeleng Likotsi, who has made the leap of turning her Young Women in Business network into the first female-owned mutual bank in South Africa. And also thanks to the Executive Chairperson of NYDA, Mr. Sifiso Mtsweni, for giving us more on the youth empowerment perspective that would go coupled with this. We're going to go to a short break now.
I